Thank you very much, guys. Welcome back to the desk. I just want to say that with that victory, we do have 3 of the 5 regions already locked in for the playoffs. Korea, China, and now North America. Depending on how the last game of the day goes, Europe may not be making it to the playoffs for 2 years running at the All-Stars. Let's start a little bit with the Taipei Assassins. I do feel, Freak, you've spoken quite extensively about the individual decision-making and some of the mistakes TPA are making. I want to highlight Wins. He did not pick up a trinket until 14 minutes and 32 seconds in the game.
New meta.
Was playing Nocturne. I also want to mention that he didn't go Feral Flare on Nocturne as well. What's your take on TPA?
Yeah, so, I mean, you know, being true to Nocturne, didn't want to put down a warding trinket. He wants to keep the lights off. So that makes sense. He's being thematic, at least. But yeah, so the Nocturne pick works fine, but generally speaking, we saw that he never really tried to gank. He actually out-CS'd Meteos for what it's worth. But yeah, not going Feral Flare despite farming non-stop for like 20 minutes and not doing anything there. And then on top of that, like, even though he had more CS, like, Meteos was still getting more gold from conservation. So even with all that, even with like minions going down, like, Meteos is still doing more things in the jungle, right? Putting more pressure out there, but just by being invisible, and right, you never saw much happen.
But it just seems like Cloud9's plan of taking Lee Sin early as the first pick, making TBA think it could possibly be the jungler here, so they didn't pick up a jungler themselves, giving the Evelynn then over to Meteos, and with 4.6, the Feral Flare nerfs, he was left with Nocturne or whatever kind of jungle he would have picked up here, and it didn't work for them, because yes, he farmed a lot. With the Feral Flare, he could have been very strong. However, he bought the Elder Lizard. Nothing really came from it, even though he was so farmed. And I feel like Cloud9, in the first start of the Champ Select, just really played it so well. I think they tricked TPA as well.
Yeah, I think they really did. I want to talk about actually the kind of turning point of that game as we move into a replay here where we saw those kills come down into the bottom lane. So let's go ahead and pull that up actually, because it's quite interesting. And I think it really shows a great decision-making, instance of decision-making from Cloud9, because they were really ahead of their opponents right here. And before we start rolling this, I want to point out already that we can tell the Balls is backed off on Lee Sin up in the top lane, which sets up the teleport in the first place. And then there's also a ward in the river brush right there, so that Link can follow Morning down into the bottom lane and zone him out. So let's get this rolling right here. And right away you see the teleport coming in, which means a delayed teleport, but Meteos was already set up right there, so it makes it quite easy to get the first kill, and then turn around onto Jay. Now in the mid lane at the same time, we're watching Link and Morning duke it out, but that prevents the LeBlanc roam to pick up any kills at all after that. And indeed, the ward in the brush allowed Link to see past to get that damage down and then pick up a kill onto Morning as well. So it's just that power of the decision-making. You can see the setup and the power that exists in having the plan in place and forcing your opponent to react. So they were just really set up for that. They knew all of the possible outcomes, and then they just turned it really quickly.
Yeah, I agree with Monte here. Cloud9 made a plan and they executed. If you look at TPA, I don't necessarily think their composition was really bad. I think they could have played it a lot better. Their bot lane underplayed their matchup. Top lane, Renekton should be able to hold his own. And if all the lanes hold their own, then Feral Flare and Nocturne can farm up a Storm into the late game. The Morgana Jinx lane should do fine against the Morgana Lucian lane should be fine against... No, I'm messing them up. TPA's lane, Morgana Jinx, double trap combo should beat Thresh Lucian, or should at least be going equal. And they weren't beating them. They were getting hooked, then black shielding afterwards. They just weren't playing their matchups correct, and then Wins was completely invisible on top of that. I mean, he didn't even buy a trinket. He was on tilt. TPA just didn't have a plan.
Well, closing thoughts from Fischer?
Well, it was pretty much the story of the game. Cloud9 didn't even need the shot calling. They didn't need to rotate around the map or anything. They just outplayed TPA individually. And it was the whole thing going in here. So now, as a European, for Fnatic, I actually believe Fnatic will win the game, and I hope now Eurobucks can go to the semifinal.
Well, every time you voted for them in the past, it hasn't worked out yet.
It is day 2.
Just letting you know. Anyways, guys, we are ready for the interview, so let's send it over to Sharks, who's sitting by with